All right, everybody, welcome to the Bengals Brawl podcast. Thank you for having me again. And this week, I'm really excited to be joined by Joe Goodberry. I actually have been very nervous all day, but for the first time today, Joe followed me on Twitter, and I was like, okay, we're setting up to have a good conversation. Just a funny background story. He is a know-it-all Bengal sensation. I don't even know how to put it. He has been NFL draft analyst, blogger, writer, podcaster, you name it, he knows it. And in the past, I had followed him and I always would look at his profile and whatever he said, he was just somebody that I trusted. And I didn't know why, but it was just whatever he was saying, that's my opinion and I'm running with it. So I'm really excited to have him on today. Joe, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, and thank you for the kind words. That means a lot.
Of course. So I want to learn a little bit more about your background first off. I don't know too much about you. I just know that you've always been somebody that I trust when it comes to the Bengals. So how did you get started with all of this? What made you a Bengals fan? There's a lot to unpack here, so you can kind of start wherever you want to.
Yeah, I grew up in Western New York, so it's Buffalo Bills country, and I've got no affiliation with Cincinnati or Ohio, really. I was born in Tampa Bay, Florida. My family, raised me here, and I remember I grew up I was born in the '80s. I remember in the late '80s and early '90s, it was the Bills Bengals played a couple times in the playoffs as a kid, and I didn't understand rivalries at the time. I didn't understand divisions. But I knew my dad didn't like what the Bengals were doing, running a no-huddle offense and keeping the Bills from making substitutions on defense. And the Bengals went to the Super Bowl that last year. The Bills came back and they were running the K-gun, what they called it around here with Jim Kelly and their high-tempo offense. And I always thought, oh, that must be their rival. So, okay, my older brother likes the Bills. I'll take whoever their rival is. I'll take the Bengals. And the helmets were awesome. I think my first memory of my own is the Bengals helmets. And, it stuck as a kid, and that makes an impression on you. And my mom liked Boomer Esiason. So all in all, I was like, all right, that's my team, and I'll stick with it. And, I grew up in an era where the internet was really the best option for me to get any type of coverage for the Bengals, and it was Jeff Hobson and Bengals.com. Really, I used to write in there and do the Hobson mailbag. I still do actually all the time and talk back and forth with him for fun. But he provided a lot of that information, and then the blog started popping up, and it was really like Cincy Jungle at the time, SB Nation. And I was like, oh, this is cool because you can talk to other fans and you can do your own fan posts if you want to write your own thing or put your own opinion down. And their editor at the time, Josh Kirkendall, was like, hey, people seem to like you. Do you want to write more for me and do more things? And I was like, okay, I guess so. That'd be cool. And it started from there. And I did it all in all for 10 years. And like you said, I did blogging. I did, some scouting, some writing, some, NFL, mostly NFL draft stuff. I tried to focus on player evaluation more than X's and O's and things like that. But it was a niche that I think not a lot of people were exploring, especially early 2000s to 2010 range. It really is now super popular, but it wasn't when I was getting in there. It wasn't popular to be critical of players for a performance level the way, it kind of is now. So it was easy for me to jump in there and really set the groundwork for what that would look like, not only for our fan base, but I think, for a lot of the league and what it looks like now in terms of, analysis and reporting.
It's funny because my opinion personally, I started following you early on. I joined Twitter in 2012. And at first my opinion was like, man, who is this kid? This guy knows his stuff, man. To a couple years later, I wish the Bengals would hire this guy. Are they watching this guy? Please tell me they're watching this guy. He hits every draft. Please tell me they're watching this guy. When did you start noticing that fans were wanting that?
It's hard to say. Twitter really in like 2009, 2010. I remember Hard Knocks and Chad Johnson being on Twitter like, oh, man, everyone's got to get on here. I'm like, okay, I'll get on there and follow Chad Johnson. I got blocked by him a few years later. I'm still blocked by Chad Johnson, but it's probably because of how I approached it, where it was like, hey, man, you missed this past year. What happened? What did you read? And players don't want to hear that. And that's when I started to narrow down what it's supposed to be. And so it was really John Thornton, Bengals defensive tackle, played there for a long time. When he retired, for whatever reason, he followed me right away and would talk with me a lot. And I guess other fans saw that and said, well, who's Joe Goodberry? And I don't know why he respected me for whatever reason. He just would sometimes, and I got this a lot over the years, over the last 10 years or so, of a player following or an agent or a coach, and they talk to you and they go, where did you learn football? How do you know this? Or what did you see on this? Or why did this happen? Or how do you know so much? And I'm like, I don't know that I know anything. I just watch, and I guess I must have a good eye for it. I don't know. I honestly can't explain it. I like football. I watch football a lot. I study it. I try to read books. I try to listen to other people that say things and see if I can pick it up and apply it to what the Bengals do. So I don't know that what I did was special. I just think it was kind of doing it first, where I think a lot of people now do a lot of the same things. And that's why I felt like I could step away, to be honest with you, because so many people now, there's so much good content. There's so many good podcasts. There's so many good blogs. And I'm like, okay, it's in great hands. I can go read and listen to other podcasts, and I'm like, oh man, that's a good take. That's a good perspective. Something that I can enjoy being a fan again and listening to other people.
What a job you did carrying that torch, my friend. Well done. And still a big fan of your work, and look forward to everything that comes out day to day.
Kind of ironic that Chad Johnson now does player grades.
That's right. Yeah.
I honestly would say it's kind of an honor to be blocked by him, but he is the reason that I am a Bengals fan. I also did not grow up in Cincinnati. I have actually only been there one time, and I became a fan because of Chad about 11 years ago, and I have not been blocked by him yet, so that's good. But I really admire your work, and like you said, you were kind of one of the first ones to do it, and I think it's awesome that you were willing to do it without letting anybody put limitations on you, because for somebody like me who just kind of started doing something like this, it's nice to hear your story and know that it can go somewhere and that people are listening and that there is an audience for the Bengals, which the media likes to portray like there isn't. But hopefully that'll change as time goes on. So I want to know the story behind your logo, the Goodberry brain, your hat right now, that I saw sold out very quickly last week. I was like, should I get myself one of these? And then immediately they were gone. So you still got it, but do you want to give us a little backstory on how that started?
Yeah, I work in a plant, and this was at my last job, actually. And I'm working with the guy who was my assistant at the time, and he's a Steelers fan. So it actually has some ties to the Steelers, which kind of sucks to remember now that I'm thinking about it. But he goes, hey, man, I want to get a tattoo. I want to do something with Steelers on my brain or on my mind or something like that. And I'm like, because I'm an artist. I like to do a lot of art, like to draw my own things. And the original logo sucked in comparison, but it's, been developed over time. And at the time I was like, yeah, well, how about this? And he never ended up getting it or anything, but I was, I can make that a Bengals brain actually. And I think that helps, to be honest with you. I think having a brand, having a logo that people instantly recognize and see and know that's you and that's what, they should expect from you. That helps. I think when people change their logo or change their name, whether it be on Twitter or Instagram or whatever the case, whatever you're using, I think it throws people off. And I did that in the beginning. And I noticed once I stuck with something, just my name, that's my logo. And I've changed it a couple times and updated it through 10 years. But doing it, I think allowed people to know who I was and what was coming. So, that's how it started. And I think now it's just to the point where people see it as, what a lot of people will tell me is, I'm not ready to spend money on the Bengals and give money to Mike Brown yet. But your logo, I would buy a hat or a shirt. And I was like, really? I never thought of it that way. All right, if enough people are interested, I'll do it. And, that was never the goal to make money off some merchandise, but enough people wanted it. And I was like, okay, how about I'll do 50 hats? I'm putting the money up front and getting them made. And they sold out instantly. So I did it again and again. It's been 3 runs now. It's been pretty successful. I don't know how many times I can keep going back to the well, but, I do think it's cool that people tell me, hey, I was at the game on Sunday. I saw your hat out there. And I just think that's awesome.
It's the perfect logo for your cerebral approach to the game. It's not like you're filled with hot takes and that kind of stuff. It's the perfect setup for what you do.
And I know you would sell one more. I missed it again. I took my dog for a walk and I came back and I saw your tweet. I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed it again. So if you want to put it back out or if you want to make one more, sign me up. I want one.
You got 3 more sold right here.
I usually get a message of about 10 or 15 people right afterwards and, oh, I missed it. So I'm like, all right, I guess there is another run coming.
That is incredible. I am a big fan of that. So I want to know, I know that now you've kind of stepped away from everything, but I do want to know, if you were able to get hired by the Bengals, or maybe like a couple years ago, you were able to pick a position with the Bengals, what would that position be and what would be your first move? Would it be something in media? Would it be something with the front office, coaching, anything? What would you choose?
People have always joked about things like that, like, "Oh, the Bengals should hire you," and I think they're joking. I don't know if people are serious, because
We're not joking.
Here's the thing though, you get with actual coaches or scouts or anything, they know way more than even what I portray. It's like, yeah, I can talk with them and hold a conversation, but it's not close. I mean, these guys know what they're doing. It just doesn't mean they always, end up winning on Sunday.
Let's just do the drafts then. Maybe you just stay involved with the drafts, because you seem to have a pretty rock solid history of hitting on the draft. So let's just be involved with the drafts then.
That's fine. I did like being the analyst and doing the media part though. So anytime like positions like that would come up, I would at least look at least one eye on that and be like, maybe I should apply. But I've got no college degree. I've got no experience. I got hired to do writing and reporting and make content. And I'm like, if you guys want me to. And every time I would try to explain to the Athletic, they'd call and I'd say, I don't have a journalism degree or anything. Like, we don't care. You're good at what you do. We just want Joe Goodberry. And I'm like, okay. So I always felt like, I was overachieving. I've always felt like I was on borrowed time anyway. So I probably didn't apply for some of those things that I should have.
Let me ask you this on that similar topic. You shared a little while ago, I think this spring, some of your Twitter DMs, and you and I'm guessing a fan of the Denver Broncos have kind of a special ongoing relationship. Do you have, first of all, if you could expand on that, and second, do you have any other oddities like that hiding in your DMs that are PG rated or better?
Yeah, so this Broncos guy, one of those regular accounts with no picture, with a name like Dave and a bunch of numbers, right? So it's like, okay, just one of those guys. They DM you all the time if you keep your DMs open, and so usually just incoherent or drunk, or you can't tell what's going on with the person. And I let that go for a while, and they would just DM maybe once a week. When a Bengals player would play well, it'd be like, hey, we'll give you our kicker for him. And I'm like, all right, keep moving. I don't say anything. And then after a while, I was like, no, or replying, get out of here, or, and then it was just no constantly. And he would come back once a week with, how about Andy Dalton? How about Giovanni Bernard? How about Joe Mixon? Then just no. And it went on for over a year, weekly, of him just offering random stuff. And it's funny. I think people had a lot of fun with that. The guy's probably still trolling me. I just don't, always pay attention. But yeah, open your DMs if you haven't, and especially you guys now that you're doing this. And it can be very interesting in terms of a lot of weirdos, a lot of people that want to offer information and you don't know their background. They may be next door neighbor with Katie Blackburn. I don't know. So you kind of got to pull it in, not run with it. Don't do that, but just file it away in the back of your brain for when other parts of the puzzle start to come together and you can go, oh, I see, this makes sense now. It's not that if I get something right, it's not because I'm psychic. It's because I got two parts of the puzzle and I can fit the rest in there, and it may not just be those guys too. Sometimes it is people that work for the team. It will happen. And it's fun when that happens.
Yeah, my DMs are definitely open, but right now they're a very interesting place, but I'm going to take that advice and make sure that I pay attention to those. I just thought of this, but I feel like before you were so into the Bengals from a reporting side, that I feel like that probably gave you a unique point of view into the team. And now you still are giving us your opinions and stuff like that, but I feel like it gives you the opportunity to be more of a fan. So I was wondering, does your game day change now that you don't have to be writing the articles or talking on the podcast or anything like that? Is your game day a little bit different?
Well, I always tried to be a fan, even when the Athletic called and hired, or USA Today or anything like that. I made it very clear, I'm going to be a fan. I am not going to, go in there and just be totally disconnected with that part of me, because I thought that gave me a unique perspective amongst other writers. You go to these places, say the Senior Bowl, and these guys are covering teams that they're fans of, but they can't say they are, or they don't care about that team at all. And I always thought that was weird. I mean, I'm trying to approach it from the perspective of the fan that can be objective and critical at the same time. So I want them to win. I actually care. I want them to do this. I want them to draft this guy because I care. It's not because I just like that player. It's because I think he can help the team. And so, when I stepped away, I wasn't going to change that much in terms of how I'm rooting for them on Sunday. You may see me be critical all week. And then 12:59 comes, I'm like, let me get a who day. Let's go. Let's do this. You know what I mean? I'm ready to watch this team go out and win. Probably be a little bit crazier during that 1 o'clock to 4 p.m. on Twitter and be a little bit sarcastic or over the top or hyperbolic. And, I think that's part of the fun of being a fan, right? I want to do that. So it's really the post game that has changed for me, instead of like, all right, I got to rewatch the game right now. Or, I've got to come up and formulate either what was the topic, what was the story of the game, which players do I want to watch film on, which play do I want to go back and look at on film. I'm like, yeah, let's finish this beer and let's have a good time. And I just relax and I don't worry about that. Like now it's, Tuesday night. I haven't watched the film yet because I'm like, that's the bye week. I've got another 10 days. I'll eventually get to it.
I mean, you definitely earned that as well. You earned the right to just be able to sit back and relax and not have to worry about it right away. And I'm kind of known, I know that we're barely meeting today, but I'm kind of known as this like positive Bengals fan where even if something goes wrong, I kind of refrain on commenting on that. And then I'll try to put a spotlight on the positive stuff just because I feel like the culture in Cincinnati, again, I'm not there. So this is just what I see from afar, but I feel like the culture in Cincinnati has been kind of negative for a really long time. And I'm hoping that with the little bit of influence I have, I can come in and just like put a spotlight on positivity and move our fans in that direction. So I wanted to know what your take is on Joe Burrow and if you believe that he has been able to change the culture in Cincinnati or if he's going to with what he's bringing. I mean, we're only 8 games in with him on our team and it's already been amazing to watch. But do you think that this will finally be what can help the fans be less negative and be more optimistic for our future?
For sure. I think there definitely is a role for the critical fan and the positive fan or analyst even, or whatever you want to call what we do here and what our little space is. But everyone's got their role. And I think it's crucial to have both of it because, and I've had a coach message me and say, be a little more positive. The players are reading this. And I'm like, all right, I am a fan. I don't want to be too negative and derail any of this or like guys, think about what's going on and what's saying out there. I do think about that. I see the fans that, will go into like a John Ross Instagram, and comment on it. And it's like, oh guys, come on, don't do that. The guy's obviously struggling with something. Let's give him some positivity. So I appreciate that part when fans do that and try to remain that way. That's a good thing. I think in terms of Burrow, the biggest thing there is, for me, from my perspective, I was critical of Andy Dalton, especially towards the end and his play and thinking that they may have wasted some super rosters there in Cincinnati for a while with Marvin Lewis and Andy Dalton, not just them, but also because the organization probably didn't push the limit and go as far as they could have. So I think a lot of fans felt that, I voiced that a lot and there was some infighting, I think even between fans of, is Dalton good enough? Is he the guy? We all like him. But is he the answer? Do you take a quarterback here? There's a lot of people that said take Chase Young and you can win with Andy Dalton. I think once we are now over that, Burrow's the pick, we can all say, as a team together collectively, we're happy to have him. And that's a different kind of energy when the fan base gets together like that and can feel that way and I think it's a microcosm of what the team feels. And, it reflects that. The team probably feels the same way of, we've got our guy. We're all in this together. We've got a chance, not only every Sunday, but broader picture outlook. We've actually got a chance in Cincinnati, which doesn't happen too often. It comes around every once in a while. And here it is again. You got to take advantage. You got to, go out there, get the right players in here, make sure you have the right coaches and actually step through that window that's going to be opening very soon for them. So yeah, I do think, Burrow instantly, once that pick is made and locked in and he's there and has looked as good as he has, all it does is cement that and gets everyone on board.
Now, halfway through the season, you hear a lot of Chargers fans really excited about the way Justin Herbert's playing, and he's obviously looking really good too. But if you look at halfway through their rookie seasons, did the Bengals make the right choice by taking Burrow and not trading down and getting multiple draft picks and taking a Justin Herbert?
Through only 8 games, I have to say they did make the right choice, but I still think there is a percentage of looking at it of it's not just the best guy now. Well, one guy's 21 and one's 23. It's who's the best also in 3 years. The data and things I've looked at, quarterbacks take that boom in their career at year 23. Burrow did it at LSU, and sometimes it happens in college in that senior year. Russell Wilson, Carson Palmer, there's been a few guys that have done that while they're still in college. Sometimes it's in the NFL with like Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. And it's like, okay, you want to get those guys when they're 21, sometimes develop them, have that boom year in the NFL. Herbert could have that in 2 years and we'll go, ooh, man, with that talent, with that arm, he's athletic, he's smart. Yeah, their Chargers look good, man. But we're not in that position. I think we needed a guy that can come in and start right away. Remember, the Chargers didn't want to start Herbert. He's played well, but they were kind of, let's go with Tyrod Taylor for half the year if they could before we throw Herbert in there. And the Bengals couldn't afford that. And I think the way Burrow finished that year, it made it a no-brainer. Like if Burrow busts, the Bengals could say, hey, everyone thought we should take Burrow. That's not on us. That's, this is a no-brainer pick. They had Justin Herbert number 2, from what I understand, over Tua. So they were right. I mean, that gets them points, if anything. It's not that, I don't think we should debate that. You got 2 really good rookie quarterbacks right now. Burrow has everything you want but a cannon arm. And I look at the last 20 years that have dominated football, quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. Did any of them have cannon arms? They did not. They won in every other way possible that we already see it with Joe Burrow within 8 games. So does that mean that limits your offense a little bit on something? Sure, of course it does. But at the same time, it doesn't mean he can't be an elite quarterback.
I completely agree with you. And an interesting point that you made about their ages is that I'm happy that we took Burrow when we did, because I feel like since he had already had that progression in college and that crazy year, that he came in and he was already established in who he is, versus Herbert. I do get a little bit nervous because I feel like he will be molded by the Chargers more than he will be able to mold the Chargers. And the Chargers are obviously can handle their business, however, but I feel like the Bengals did need somebody to come in and shake up the offense and shake up literally everything, which I think that Burrow has done.
That's a great point, actually, because if you think of it this way, how many times have people said, well, if the Bengals drafted Mahomes, he wouldn't have been Mahomes. If the Bengals would have drafted Lamar Jackson, he wouldn't have been MVP Lamar Jackson. Same like Josh Allen, these developmental guys, right? So if you look at it that perspective of the Bengals, if that's true, I don't know that it's true. I don't subscribe to that theory, but if that's true, did you want the Bengals developing Justin Herbert, or did you want Joe Burrow to come in and make the Bengals Joe Burrow's Bengals? I kind of like that more, and I like that perspective of him coming and taking hold of this team, and it feels like he has already.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I am one of the fans that is like, we deserve Joe Burrow, and I'm so happy that he's here because I could see that he's bringing a change. And also after having a 2-14 season, I feel like the players in the locker room, although they may have said that they weren't down and they knew that they were building, I think that if we didn't have somebody like Joe Burrow join the team this year, then the players still would have he needed to come in. We needed somebody to come in and kind of just raise the spirit and give us something to look forward to. So I'm excited about that. I want to touch on, you talked about John Ross earlier, and I am a big John Ross advocate. As everybody that listens to this podcast knows, I've been a supporter for a long time, and I want to get your opinion because you know a lot and I trust you, like I said. So were you surprised that the Bengals did not trade Ross, or were you expecting it? And do you hope that they find a way to put him into this offense, or I'm just going to let you take the floor here.
Thank you. I was a big fan of Ross coming out of Washington also. I think someone sent me this today on Twitter in a little bit of an argument. They posted one of my takes on John Ross before the draft in 2017. It was like, and it just something I must have wrote or interviewed and said, yeah, I like John Ross for the Bengals at 9. And he like highlights it. And I'm like, yeah, I stand by that. I still think he was a good player. I have gone back in the last 4 years and watched Washington tape just to be like, no, I didn't miss. What is up with this? This guy looks good. He still looks good. He looks fat. And it's not just the 4.22. He was agile. He was quick. He tracked the ball so well, something that he has not done in the NFL level. I didn't have a problem with his hands. Sure, he double caught sometimes, but so did Chad. When you get that much separation, you can afford to do that. I didn't have a problem with John Ross other than the health issues, which was a long list of things. And I thought, if the Bengals are giving him a clean bill of health to draft number 9, he must be all right. And it didn't work, obviously. We're at this point now where he's got 8 games left in their career. Even Tyler Dragon reported today the Bengals will not trade him, and they will let him finish out his 4th year and let him walk into free agency, meaning it's done. The evaluation is over. The experiment is over. I don't know if that even means he'll play at all. So was it a surprise that they couldn't trade him? I don't think it was on their part. I do think they probably shopped him and called around. I think when teams look at him and say, well, he hasn't stayed healthy, and we have to pay the rest of a number 9 pick salary for the rest of the year, while that may not be a lot, I think that only leaves a couple teams that would be willing to do it, and it really comes down to compensation or opportunity. Bengals are probably looking at a 7th round pick anyway. So what happens if AJ Green misses time again like he has? What happens if T. Higgins misses time or Auden Tate? I mean, they're as good as we felt the receiver position was coming into the year. It got weird there for a couple weeks, and then now we feel really good about it again. Auden Tate having a good game this last week. But if one guy goes down, I would like that next guy up to be John Ross, even though it probably is Michael Thomas or something like that. I'm still looking at it like this core could still use some speed. And I know he has his issues. And you watch him and you're like, man, is he even interested? Is he looking for the ball? What is going on there? You just feel like he's not totally invested. And maybe part of that is they're not as invested in him anymore. What would that do to your confidence, right? So I still hope there's an opportunity or a path for him to make one more impact on this team, because for all his faults, I put together a highlight video of him of just really the last 2 years. It's 6.5 minutes long of, man, I forgot he made all these plays. And I even said that when they had him a healthy scratch, I put it on Twitter. I said, what's your favorite play of the John Ross era if it's over? And a lot of people were like, the one time he caught the ball. I'm like, well, that's not true. Come on, man. He's actually made plays. I know he's had a lot of mistakes. I understand this. That's not worthy of a number 9 pick. But at the same time, does that mean he can't help you at all? I find that hard to believe.
I agree with you. And I actually tell people often that DM me about whenever I try to stand up for John Ross. And I kind of say that I'm not willing to have the conversation with them if their only comeback is going to be that he drops balls, because I feel like there is so much to this situation. And I noticed, this might be a little controversial, but recently I've noticed that I kind of feel like sometimes AJ Green looks disinterested or kind of gives up a little bit towards the end. And I noticed it a couple times this past game. And I thought to myself, I'm no expert here, but I thought to myself, that probably may be because he's not making as many big plays as he's used to. His confidence level may be a little bit down. He's not getting as many targets. And I'm not saying that is a reflection of what John Ross could be feeling, but I am saying that AJ is kind of facing a little bit of adversity this season. And I think that we can tell his confidence levels down and that he is giving up on some routes. So I feel like it points and explains why John Ross would be doing the same. I did see that you mentioned, and we know that talking about mental health is like a very controversial topic and we should leave it to the experts. But what you tweeted out about John Ross last week, I think it was, about how the way that he's been acting and some of the behaviors that we've seen from him could be some side effects or symptoms of depression. And I think that although nobody's diagnosing anybody, I do think that after he was benched in the very beginning of his NFL career for that fumble, I think it was, by Marvin Lewis, and then he ended up having that really scary injury and came back for a couple games and then got injured or was sick and all this stuff was going on. I feel like he just hasn't had that time to build his confidence. But I'm going to stop ranting now. I just really feel so bad for him. I hope that he gets a chance soon. I want to know, did you ever pick somebody for the Bengals to draft that they ended up not drafting and you look at like, that's the one that got away? Is there somebody that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of players that I always look at and say, he should have been the guy. 2 guys I can give you just to pat my own, back here and toot my own horn, whatever you want to do. But 2 guys that I really liked in the years that I thought they should have attacked both positions, and it may have saved them down the line. I want to say, was it 2015? Stephon Diggs out of Maryland. He ended up being a 5th-round pick to the Vikings. I had a 1st-round grade on him. They ended up not taking a receiver all that year. And I was thinking, man, you guys, you've got Marvin Jones and Sanu coming up. I can't imagine you're going to pay both of them. You should probably draft one this year. I thought Tyler Lockett, there was a bunch of guys that year that you should probably be taking one of them. And they didn't. And I thought that hurt them when they lost Jones and Sanu, because then they were forced to draft Tyler Boyd in round 2. And Tyler Boyd's worked out, right? But then they were forced to follow that up with what? John Ross, full circle here, number 9 the following year, because they needed speed. So it has a cascading effect when that happens. Another guy was similar year after that, or 2 years after that. Grady Jarrett out of Clemson. I had a first round grade on him. He goes in the 5th round to the Falcons. And the whole time I watched him, I'm like, he would be a great Geno Atkins understudy or clone. I think he could come up with Atkins, give him a lot of help. Bengals really haven't given Atkins a good running mate throughout his whole career. The fact that he's had the career he's had and he's going to make the Hall of Fame, you're going to say the best D tackle that was next to him was Domata Peko, who was just an okay run defender, never really a pass rusher, so he wasn't out there helping Geno get those sacks. It was probably Wallace Goodberry who kicked inside and helped, rush inside. That speaks volumes of how good Atkins was. They probably should have addressed that position much more often than they did than the year where they took Devon Still and Brandon Thompson and really kind of backed off it from there.
Hey, when you're doing grades on drafts, do you notice a trend on specifically like collegiate coaching where you can say this specific position coach really puts out the absolute most from a given player? Is there specific position coaches across the country that you're saying, keep an eye on what Sam Pittman's putting out of Arkansas or that kind of stuff?
Of course, I automatically think of like Iowa and offensive linemen because they've got a good track record. Wisconsin too. And here's the thing. You could have a really good, take Alabama and Nick Saban and you go, okay, they've got a really great program down there. Those guys come out NFL ready. There's also bad parts about that because those guys don't typically get too much better. They're coached so well that there's a good chance they go to an Adam Gase led Jets and they're not coached as well anymore and they don't look as good. And people wonder why. Well, they're not as prepared as Alabama is going into those games. So that player doesn't look as good. So there is good points of having a guy that's extremely well coached, but then you go and you can go to take a North Carolina that shouldn't have anyone and you say, you know what? I'm not sure that guy was really well coached there. And there's a lot of potential. His ability, his body, you start getting into more of the old traditional scouting stuff of, oh, look at his balance, look at his feet, look at his arm length. And you go, the flash is there. I think he can be much better than what he was coached at. So it works both ways. You do take notice of trends of where good players come from good colleges, but I also think it's just as valuable to look at the opposite direction.
Do you have a favorite player? Doesn't necessarily mean the Bengals draft him. Do you have a favorite player that you've ever evaluated or a few that really stick out? Like, man, that guy was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can think of a few guys. Aaron Donald at Pitt and he became Defensive Player of the Year, maybe the best defensive player, future Hall of Famer. Watching him, I was like, geez, what is the negatives on this guy? And first time I saw him was at the Senior Bowl, and he was projected to go in round 2. And I'm like, okay, so he's 280 pounds maybe? Is that what's going on? Is that why? And it's just, they couldn't block him. Nobody could put a hand on him. And he slowly crept up boards to end up going 12th or 13th to the Rams. But I would tell anyone that would listen, this guy's fantastic. He should be a top 5 pick. And at draft night, I said, he's going to be the best player from this draft. And that was like Khalil Mack was in that class. And there's a lot of guys that go in the top there that I think people were more likely of, I like this guy. But is he at 280 pounds worth a top 10 pick? I think defensive tackle is, to me, one of the funnest positions to watch overall. Because I think in college game, and it's kind of transitioning to more of a 3-man front, and I hate watching that. But if I can find a team that's playing a lot of 4-man fronts, and a guy consistently makes the guy in front of him look silly, whether it's just on a quick step or his hand usage, I think it can end up with him not even getting a pressure on the play, not even getting a sack because the ball comes out so quick in college. Guys are running free in so many conferences, and you can say, well, the numbers just aren't there for that guy, but he's consistently threatening or consistently, making that guard bail out of there. And so I really have a fun time watching defensive tackles and all, but so for me, Aaron Donald completely stands out.
Yeah, Aaron Donald is somebody that I think it was on one of my very first episodes with the Bengals Brawl. I said that I would take him on the Bengals any day. But speaking of defensive tackle, during this offseason, do you think that the Bengals, not only at the draft and free agency and stuff like that, do you think that the Bengals should go all in on the offensive line or defense, or what are the main positions that you think that we need to tackle to kind of propel us forward next season?
Yeah, those are two of the main focuses. We know what type of offensive line they've been fielding. I do like the 2 moves they've made to get Finney and Spain in here. I think that can help, but are those long-term solutions? Probably not. They probably still need another tackle. They probably could use a really good guard. If they went into this draft first, second, third round, took offensive linemen, nobody would complain, right? We'd say, okay, great, let's protect Joe Burrow, let's do this thing. But at the same time, Carl Lawson, William Jackson are free agents on the defensive side. Geno Atkins is playing out the final days, it seems like, unless he can come back from the shoulder injury and still give them solid minutes for the rest of his career. And Carlos Dunlap's gone. So defensive line is going through a transition right now. You really just have Sam Hubbard and DJ Reader there. Reader's out for the year. Hubbard's currently hurt. It doesn't look great right now. They could go in there in the first round and say, okay, we need an edge rusher. And I wouldn't bat an eye because they do. I think it's very hard to be a good defense or be a team that can close out late in the fourth quarter if you don't have that dominant rusher that can really take over a game or make that play that you need. And so when I look at that, I say, it's probably equal, especially in the first round, because you can take offensive linemen second, third, fourth round and get starting quality players. Some of the best Bengals offensive linemen the last 15 years have been that. Andrew Whitworth in the second round, Clint Bowling in the fourth round. You can find those guys, and it doesn't happen often for edge rushers outside of round one. D tackle, you can do that round 2 and 3 and 4. So if you're asking me to, like right now, formulate a plan, I would say edge rusher probably in front of everything without even watching players yet. If you can find the right edge rusher, you go him in first round. You come back and take that guard in round 2. You come back and take that D tackle in round 3. The hard part is, what if they don't re-sign William Jackson? I think you have a massive hole at guard. We watched the Titans, right, this last week. They've got decent pass rushers. They've got Jadeveon Clowney. Vic Beasley was just cut, but he can, at least do some things out there with his athleticism. Jeffrey Simmons, who they drafted in the first round last year, defensive tackle, that should have beat up the Bengals line. But they've got no corners. They had to trade for a corner right at the deadline. Without corners, it doesn't matter what your D-line looks like because the ball will come out quickly and they will find a guy open. We saw that with Joe Burrow. You go against a good quarterback, you got to have a good corner in there. You got to tilt the coverage some other way other than what the Titans were definitely doing last week. So if you let go William Jackson, the Bengals are in a situation where Trey Waynes is their number one. We haven't even got to see him yet. I don't know if we will see him. Maybe we will in December. It doesn't look great from that perspective.
Speaking on offensive line, been well documented. They gave up no sacks for the first time this season. Is that the reason for that because they were so much better, or the Titans pass rush is subpar, or is it because Burrow got rid of the ball? He did a better job of maneuvering around the pocket, or all of the above?
It's always all of the above. And whenever you look at something, for example, look at PFF grades this week, and they're not the end all be all, but when they overall give them the worst pass blocking day of the year, you kind of perk up and go, whoa, that's weird. Why? How did that happen? Did this offensive line actually play that bad and Burrow just was Superman back there? Sure, on some plays he was. We saw him avoid, what could have been 3 sacks on one play and ends up getting 6 yards. He did his part. He did what he had to do, what we expect him to do, and deal with pressure in the way that elite quarterbacks do. So you go back and you watch a little bit and you say, okay, Hakeem Adeniji was okay, but he was kind of a liability. They looked like they wanted to get away from Adeniji, roll Burrow out, slide the pocket a little bit towards Adeniji and get Burrow away from him if he could. Spain's over there getting calls from Billy Price. You don't find this out until after the game that Spain has no idea. So every time they call a huddle, he looks at Price like, what am I doing? Oh, you're blocking this guy. So, that's kind of weird. Overall, they did what they had to do. You need those performances in good years, not even just these years where we're like, they're throwing things together. Let's hope we get as many wins as possible. If they ever go to that championship run, you're going to have games where you're like, man, we've got no starting corners out there. We've got no starting linebackers. All the receivers are down, whatever the case may be. These guys got to step up for one game. It's hard to do it for 6, 7, 8 games. But if you can get through with one game, it's typically a sign of, okay, we can keep this thing together. We can duct tape this boat so we don't sink all at once here. And they did that. So credit to them.
When you're doing your talent evaluations and your draft predictions, and I know this year is so unique, but I look at what are you looking at for guys like Jamar Chase or DJ Ford or Newman or the guys that have opted out of the 2020 NCAA season but have a ridiculous amount of talent. I mean, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of potential draft picks that we don't have any junior or senior year game film, and you're saying you're a year removed from this speed and this ability. And I know from my experience, as soon as you're not involved with 20 hours a week of practice and those kind of things, suddenly you're able to spend 20 hours a week plus in the weight room and you're not limited by NCAA restrictions. So are these guys potentially coming out even better in terms of size and mass and strength, but maybe pick right back up where they left off? Or how do you evaluate that kind of miss in this one-off, hopefully, situation?
teams are going to have to do their homework. And I think from our perspective, it's going to be even harder from the outside. But I think teams will probably approach it like as if this guy's been injured, and not to the sense of you're going to poke and prod him and make sure, he's good to go. They're going to do that regardless. But they're going to probably say, okay, we want to get this guy into mini camps as early as possible. Not only is he probably not going to be in game shape, he's probably going to want to get into the flow again. We've seen the effects of guys getting hurt for the year and what it looks like the year they come back, and they have to shake off rust for that first month. You're probably going to do that if you're Jamar Chase. You're probably going to have that. I want that guy in there as fast as possible. Hopefully there are OTAs and things like that next year when we're done with all this and we can get back to normal schedule. And so I think teams are going to look at it, and I do think you're right. The explosion of rookies, remember it used to take rookies 2 or 3 years to really, play well in the NFL. You used to kind of just bench those guys for a while unless they're truly special, and you get them up to speed. But now the way these guys train, they're sometimes in better shape come summer than these veterans are that use the camp to get into shape. These guys are ready to rock and roll from day one because they've been training so hard. And I think that could be the case. You might see Jamar Chase when he shows up at the combine next year, and he's rocked up and maybe 15 pounds added to him and just as fast or faster. And you go, yeah, he's that top 5 pick we thought he was. But I do think there always is probably a little bit more homework into that. I think it could also backfire a little bit. I think there's maybe some old school coaches that look at it like, why'd you opt out? Well, what, you're afraid of getting hurt? You're afraid of getting sick? Maybe poke them a little bit that way. But in the end of the day, I think when you are a guy that's probably a top 20 pick, Chase is probably a top 10, top 12, it won't affect you much. You'll still get your money. You'll still be drafted pretty high.
Yeah, so we're 8 games out from finishing the season, and the draft is going to be here before we know it. Hopefully things get back to normal before then. But what can we expect for the second half of the season? Do you think that personally, I think that we probably have 4 or 5, hopefully 5 more wins coming to us soon. But what do you think after the bye? How do the Bengals come back? I know we have some people coming back. What do you think? How many wins do you think that we're going to take?
Steelers win, obviously.
Yeah, right. The Steelers win coming off a bye. If it's anti-Marvin Lewis, they're going to come out of this bye and they're going to put it on the Steelers. And we're like, all right, Zach Taylor, we're ready. But coming into the year, I thought 6 wins would be fair. Maybe they could push 7 because the schedule isn't bad. We saw that in the first half already. They could have, honestly, they could have won most of the games they played. Besides that Ravens game, maybe the week 2 in the Browns, they were catching up mostly. But I even think you roll that dice again and the Bengals come out of that one. So it's hard to look at that and say they already maybe punted 4 games they should have won. How are they going to get to 6 wins now? They're technically at 2.5. I do see an avenue for getting still to 6 or 5 even, and we'll look at, what if for the first half of all the games they missed out on. But the NFC East is a joke. You've got the Texans who can't figure themselves out. You still got the Dolphins who are playing well, but I still feel like, it depends on how Tua's playing. And week 1 for him wasn't great, or his first game, I should say, wasn't great. So if you've got the better quarterback, you feel pretty good about that matchup, no matter how the rest of the team looks. That's just the way the NFL is. So there is an avenue there. Does that mean they win all those? No, probably not. They're still finding their footing in a lot of ways. So maybe they win 3 more in the second half. Maybe it ends up they should have won 3 in the first half, 3 in the second half, and really ends up 5, 10, and 1. And I think we can come away with that and say, okay, Zach Taylor, maybe I think in the first half, before that Titans win, we were thinking, don't know if he's the guy. I'd love him to be the guy. I'd like him to prove he's the guy. But as of right now, I did not know. The Titans win helps a lot, I think, in confidence in the last 3 weeks of scoring 30 points. And you're like, okay, so at least you're an offensive guy. You're a quarterback guy. Both are performing at a high level right now, despite the issues. That's a good thing. That's good for his resume. You won a close game. You won in a blowout. You figured out, you're going for it on 4th downs at a higher rate. You're not having these second and long runs. It seemed like in the first 3 games, it was run on 1st down and you're on 2nd and 7 and it's run again, or they were last in the league next to Adam Gase for 2nd down and long throws. You don't want to be down there. Now, since then, they're way at the top. They're a pass-heavy team. They're letting Joe Burrow cook. Maybe that was taking time for them to fully, because they didn't have him for all of camp and all of no preseason, right? So maybe it took them a few weeks to really say, okay, he can control this offense. So they've adjusted. Those adjustments I want to see. So it's good that they won in Tennessee or against Tennessee. Maybe we're higher on them right now than we should be. But I think 5.5 wins is a fair expectation.
Does the Tennessee win have you back and believing in the Zach Taylor camp, or are you still on the fence? I know it was, like you said, it was a roller coaster. We believed, got off to that slow start, everybody was like, this guy is not the guy. Heard plenty of pundits out there saying he's not the guy. And now that's went away after the Tennessee win. Where's your thoughts on that?
I want to believe. Is that wrong? I want him to be the guy. He's
of
a
course
nice
not.
guy. I feel like he connects. He understands, especially for younger players today. So I want him to be the guy. So it's hard for me to really, for
he
a while
goes for it on fourth down.
Yeah, I like that. And they're converting. Never punt ever again, please. I love Kevin Huber, but I hold field goals. That's all you need to do. Anyways, so I want him to be the guy, because also the hard part is, and we see this, if he's not the guy, how much of the window does that close on the Joe Burrow era? And we expect Burrow to be here for 10 years, but you've got 4 years, year 2 to year 5, where you can maximize that cap space because you're not going to pay him a lot of money. If you flounder that, it's going to be hard. You got to be an exceptional franchise to win from that point. And I just don't mean win 9, 10, 11 games, get into the playoffs. We've seen that with Dalton. You've got to step through that window, maximize that roster once you're paying your quarterback. It becomes very hard. So if Taylor isn't the guy, that probably sets him back not just 1 year, but 2 years. And that leaves the window even smaller. So I selfishly, for that reason, for that theory that the window isn't as big as sometimes we think it is, he needs to be the guy.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on Zach Taylor. I have not given up on him. And if somebody would have told me last season that the Bengals were scoring 30, 31, 27 points, 34 points this season and still not winning football games, I would have been like, you are full of crap. I'm very excited to see that the offense has grown to what it has, and I hope to keep this going. But I want to talk to you about Joe Mixon and Gio Bernard. Clearly, they've been able to fit Bernard really well in these past 2 games with Mixon being out. And do you think that there will be an adjustment made to get Gio a couple more snaps? I mean, he does good things for us. So do you think that we find a different way to use Mixon? Does Mixon continue to get all the snaps? How would you handle it if you are the Bengals coaching staff?
It's a hard dynamic, right? You have 2 good players that you trust and you want to see them get the ball as much as possible. But if you look at it analytically, what produces most points, it's not running the ball. It's really you should be out there throwing it and chucking it. And that's probably why the Bengals are scoring 30, even though Mixon's not out there the last couple of weeks, because I hate to say it, running backs don't matter that much. Even if Mixon is special and we want to, we love him and we like the way he plays and we like his energy, does he affect that many games? He had a tremendous year last year. They won 2 games. It really doesn't have a win-loss. It's more for our fun and enjoyment, to be honest, and the energy of the team. And you will need him in a handful of times to close out games. And he's great at that. So I want him there for those few games that we need him. But Gio is really good, and he's a really good pass protector. And it seems like sometimes people have said to me this week, does the linebacker block better for Gio? What is going on there? Well, it's just Gio's a little more decisive, a little quicker, and so the line can't hold up forever, not a poor line especially. So Mixon, you kind of just got to hit it and go for it. The hard part also is that Mixon was a tremendous pass receiver at Oklahoma. I remember watching that class and saying it's Christian McCaffrey who catches 100 balls a year, and then it's Joe Mixon. And then it's Alvin Kamara, and it's other guys down below. And it wasn't Leonard Fournette who catches more balls than Mixon. That's weird. That shouldn't happen. So when I look at it, I say, well, Mixon needs more catches. He needs to be spread out. He's a mismatch, man. You put him out wide. Let a safety or his corner go on him. That's a mismatch because he's bigger. Let a linebacker go with him. It's a mismatch because he's faster. I need to see more of that. I want to see more of that. I think there's an avenue to use both. I think there's an avenue to even make both even better and help your offense even more. So it's there. For me, I look at it like, okay, they've gotten the quarterback playing well. They've got the receivers to at least to a point where I like the combination in the rotation right now, especially with Auden Tate last week. I feel good about that. You got to figure out the offensive line, and that's an ongoing thing. So maybe that doesn't happen right now. But let's figure out the best way to use both these backs, because both can help you, as we know.
So we may just be stating the obvious here, but what you just said about Mixon is what I have been saying for weeks. So I am patting myself on the back, and I'm very happy to hear that that was your answer. And before we let you go, I want to know, who is your favorite Bengals player that is currently on the team, and who is your favorite all-time Bengals player? Obviously, they could both be on the team right now, but who are those 2 people for you?
I should say Joe Burrow. I think that's the easy answer, but I'm going to go back and throw it back. I love Giovanni Bernard coming out of North Carolina, and he was the guy I wanted in that draft class. So when they got him, and this is coming off Tyler Eifert also, I'm like, I remember saying I can write 10,000 words right now on what this offense can do. And man, they backed that up with getting Marvin Jones, who I also love. That I just thought that team, sometimes my mind goes back there and I go, oh, what a great roster that was. What a chance you had.
What could have been.
Yeah, I think we do that so often. We look at 05, we look at 2015. Hopefully it's not 2025 for the next one. Every 10 years they give us something, which actually doesn't sound so crazy now. But anyways, I would say Gio, and the way he stepped up into that role, the mustache, how do you not love that? He's just a cool guy. It's the Borg collective. We are all Giovanni Bernard. We are all, we all love this team. We all are willing to do whatever it takes to see this team succeed. And I think that is Gio. Going out there and doing whatever it takes. We've seen him on punt returns or punt kickoff coverage and things like that. And I'm like, yep, he's just the man. Look at him.
That I agree. You know what? My next jersey might be a Gio jersey, especially the mustache this season. I think it gives him a little bit more swagger, and I like it. I'm like, okay, I like what you're bringing here. But thank you so much for joining us. West Coast Mark, Josh, do you guys have any more questions for Joe? This has been a really fun conversation.
Could be something new for the logo in your next update, Joe. Throw a little mustache on that guy.
Now you're talking. I like it.
It is one of the most iconic mustaches. We actually had a conversation about that, I don't know, about a month or so ago, if it was as iconic as Max Montoya's or Ken Anderson. So he's already automatically up there. But, Joe, this was a lot of fun, man. We really, really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I didn't answer. My favorite player of all time is Chad Johnson, but even though I'm blocked, I get over it. He's the man. He always will be. So thanks for having me, guys. It was a good time.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.